Ever wondered how a simple apple falling from a tree could explain the movement of planets, the trajectory of a rocket, and even why you don't float away into space? That's the power of Newton's laws of motion, and today, we're diving deep into how these fundamental principles work, specifically within the context of Canada. Now, before we jump into the Canadian angle, let's establish a solid foundation. Who was Newton, and what are these laws we keep talking about? Sir Isaac Newton, an English physicist and mathematician, published his groundbreaking work, Principia Mathematica, in 1687. In it, he laid out 3 laws of motion that revolutionized our understanding of the universe. These laws aren't just abstract concepts, they're the bedrock of classical mechanics, explaining everything from the smallest interactions of particles to the grandest movements of celestial bodies. Newton's first law, often called the law of inertia, states that an object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion with the same speed and in the same direction unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. Think of a hockey puck sitting on the ice. It won't move unless a force, like a hockey stick, acts upon it. Once it's moving, it'll continue gliding across the ice in a straight line at a constant speed until another force, like friction or hitting the boards, slows it down or changes its direction. This principle is universal, applying equally in Canada as it does anywhere else. Now, where does Canada come into play? Well, the application of Newton's first law is evident in countless everyday scenarios across the country. Consider a car driving down a highway in British Columbia. The car maintains its speed and direction until the driver applies the brakes, a force, or turns the steering wheel, another force. The law of inertia is also crucial in understanding the movement of ice hockey players on the rink. They glide effortlessly, relying on the principle that they'll continue moving until a force, like a check from an opponent or friction from the ice, changes their motion. Even the simple act of walking relies on inertia. You push off the ground, and your body continues moving forward until another force, like air resistance or gravity, slows you down. Newton's second law deals with the relationship between force, mass, and acceleration. It states that the acceleration of an object is directly proportional to the net force acting on the object and inversely proportional to its mass. In simpler terms, the greater the force applied to an object, the greater its acceleration. And the greater the mass of an object, the smaller its acceleration for the same force. This is represented by the famous equation F equals ma, where F is force, m is mass, and a is acceleration. Think about pushing a shopping cart at a grocery store in Ontario. The harder you push, the greater the force, the faster the cart accelerates. If the cart is full of groceries, greater mass, it will require more force to achieve the same acceleration compared to an empty cart. This principle is also vital in understanding the launch of rockets at the Canadian Space Agency. The powerful engines exert a massive force to accelerate the rocket upwards against the force of gravity. The larger the mass of the rocket, the greater the force required to achieve the necessary acceleration to escape Earth's gravity. Another example can be seen in winter sports. Consider a bobsleigh team racing down a track in Whistler. The team's combined mass and the force of gravity determine their acceleration down the slope. The team strives to minimize friction to maximize their acceleration and achieve the fastest possible time. Newton's third law is perhaps the most famous. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. This means that whenever one object exerts a force on a second object, the second object simultaneously exerts an equal and opposite force on the first object. These forces are called action-reaction pairs. Imagine a canoeist paddling on a lake in Algonquin Park. When the canoeist pushes the paddle against the water, the water pushes back on the paddle with an equal and opposite force, the reaction, propelling the canoe forward. This principle is also at play when a hockey player skates. The player pushes backward on the ice, the action, and the ice pushes forward on the player's skate, the reaction, propelling them across the ice. Even the simple act of walking demonstrates Newton's third law. When you walk, you push backward on the ground with your foot, the action, and the ground pushes forward on your foot, the reaction, allowing you to move forward. This is why walking on ice can be tricky. The lack of friction reduces the reaction force, making it difficult to propel yourself forward. So, how do these laws apply specifically in Canada? Well, the laws themselves are universal and don't change based on location. However, the contexts in which we see these laws in action are what make the Canadian perspective interesting. From the movement of hockey players on the ice to the launch of rockets from the Canadian Space Agency, from the design of bridges and buildings in earthquake-prone regions to the physics behind curling on a frozen lake, Newton's laws are constantly at play. They are fundamental to understanding the physical world around us, regardless of where we are. Consider the design of the CN Tower in Toronto. Engineers had to meticulously consider Newton's laws to ensure the structural integrity of this massive building. They had to account for the forces of gravity, wind, and even the potential for seismic activity. The stability and safety of the tower rely on the principles of Newton's laws. Another example can be seen in the construction of the Confederation Bridge, linking Prince Edward Island to the mainland. Engineers had to consider the forces exerted by the tides, ice flows, and wind to design a bridge that could withstand these challenging conditions. Newton's laws were crucial in ensuring the bridge's stability and longevity. Even the simple act of skiing down a mountain in Banff National Park is governed by Newton's laws. The skier's motion is influenced by gravity, friction, and the forces they exert with their skis. Understanding these forces is essential for controlling their speed and direction. From the smallest interactions of particles in a research lab in Montreal to the largest infrastructure projects across the country, Newton's laws are the foundation of our understanding of the physical world. They are not just abstract concepts, they are the principles that govern the motion of everything around us. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.